Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for part 10 of our Veteran Player Guide series, where today I'm going to be talking about Awareness, the Cruiser Edition. We did a Awareness Destroyer Edition already, but today is going to be Cruiser Edition. I've got 3 clips, 2 in the Petropavlovsk, and then 1 in Cerberus, the Tier 10 Commonwealth heavy cruiser, if you will. So ultimately, with awareness, like let's take for example for cruisers, as is today's focus. I would say as a whole, there's 3 things that really dictate what you're specifically looking at in terms of your awareness. Then that ends up dictating your map positioning, where you're at in the game. Those 3 things in short. 1 is the type of ship you're in. 2 is what is the lineup of the enemy team. 3, what's happening on the map, in terms of, like, you could say mini map awareness. Is your team winning a flank? Are they losing said flank? This, that, and the other. So when you're playing cruisers in World of Warships, Petropavlovsk has a pretty... They actually nerfed the concealment. It used to be stronger, or lesser, if you will. It was closer to the 12 kilometer. I don't know if you could actually, if I remember correctly, could you stealth radar with Petro, or it was like 12.1 or something? I don't remember. But now it's 13.2, full conceal build. But with cruisers, the big thing when it comes to awareness is, as a whole, typically cruisers that are spotted in the start of the match are the ones that are first focused by the battleships, as the battleships are moving out of enemy battleships, moving out their spawns to their positions. If a cruiser gets picked up, usually the battleships are most eager to shoot the cruisers, because often you're showing a bit of a side or a larger angle. And I'm like kicking myself that I didn't realize I had didn't have armor piercing loaded here. But as you're positioning early on, you end up showing a lot of broadside, and battleships can take advantage of that, especially if you spawn mid like we did in this game and you're trying to move to either the A and C flank. So cruisers that have a pretty terrible concealment really tend to suffer early on. So like Yoshinos, Azumas, Moskvas, Stalingrads. I mean, I've seen all those ships get yoinked at the first start of the game by a Bourgogne salvo, a Vermont salvo, this, that, and the other. So that really dictates being aware that, as you saw at the start of this game, there was a battleship that took a shot at us, so we had to slow down and turn in to not get punished. So constantly you're looking around to see what's happening. You know, we have this destroyer here. We've got a CV who seems to be focusing us. There's a destroyer in Bravo. There's a Salem who's being super aggressive, actually. Usually don't see that aggressiveness always by cruisers, and I'm understanding of what the Salem's capable of, so I'm afraid he's going to citadel me and, so to speak, prevent me from reversing further back. But I also know there's a destroyer there, and I don't want to get torpedoed. So I didn't use Hydra there yet because I felt pretty safe to just wait and not use it yet. But of course, the smarter decision would have just been go ahead and use Hydro, be on the safe side. And now I'm going to go ahead and use it because I do want to reverse back out and get this destroyer. So the early positioning really matters a lot. When we talk about, so Petro is this very tanky heavy cruiser, if you will, with her 220s. Right, so I am aware that I'm likely going to be spotted a lot. Petro's is the ship that's built to tank, if you will. You'll definitely see that in the next highlight clip. But then in terms when we talk about the enemy lineup here, what's really frustrating is if there wasn't a CV on an enemy team, I actually probably would have pushed up on and sat more nose on Bravo to the islands on the bottom right side. But I decided not to, because I don't want to put myself in that position, because a competent CV player who sees a cruiser kind of this bow and locked in position, who can't really get out of it, will end up deciding to focus you. That tends to happen a lot when you at least have a good to really good CV player. And that's exactly what is happening to us in this game, as frustrating as it is. I'm not in a position to even consider turning out broadside and disengaging and getting to this kiting position. Because when we talk about what's happening on the map, I mean, you look at the mini map, like we don't have any caps. This flank over here, I'm the only one on this flank. which by default makes me the player who's going to get focused by the entirety of the enemy team. And if the CV player is smart, right, he knows if he takes me out, it's going to completely collapse the flank. And when you look at the mini-map, where's our team? They're all over on the 1-2 line. So we've given up massive map control, which is really unfortunate here, as we've lost ships pretty fast here. So basically, you know, in this instance, we're just screwed for all intents and purposes. It just sucks. So there's really not a lot we can do. And this actually unfolded like poorly, really, really fast. I mean, there's a CV, or we have a submarine trying to go for the CV, but not doing a very good job at it. You know, Malta with all of his planes is able to be take his time. You know, you saw him fly right over us, and then he turns back in to try to get another strike off, but we accelerate forward, and I think we only ate 1 torpedo there. So we just get absolutely clobbered, and I'm like, I don't care. Just go ahead and kill me. And there's a Vermont back here, and I think the Vermont is the one who ends up just yoinking us here, because it's just like dumb how fast our team ended up folding and not fighting for the flank. In this instance, we had to be mindful. There was a lot of CV spotting again, so hence when I talk about awareness, does enemy team have CVs? Well, you know, what's their lineup? Do they have carriers? Do they have submarines? Those two, much more than destroyers, are real pains to deal with because they spot you so easily, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So when you're consistently spotted, it really dampens in terms of how you end up positioning and adjusting yourself on the map. Like here, I want to be aware that the Conqueror has used his specialized repair team. You know, it's a massive heal that Conqueror gets, and I really want to focus Conqueror out. But I'm aware that the longer that I don't deal with the Utrecht, who's dropping, you know, the high explosive airstrikes, you know, and those reload so fast, he's going to just keep overwhelming my damage control party and my repair party. In addition to another CV focusing us this game, we're going to get a lot of planes shot down ultimately in this match by the time we die. But I'm calling out the Conqueror because I know he needs to go. As much as I would rather shoot the light cruiser, you know, Conqueror needs to go with the 2 and 33 hit points, and our Wisconsin getting the kill ultimately. You know, still a destroyer, there's still a submarine, and we're still trying to avoid CV torpedoes behind us. The other thing to be aware of is, I guess you could say, maybe this is another thing to add in, is when players end up feeling comfortable. Like here, Genon, he thinks he's behind an island, so he's safe, but he's really not. So we're able to get a citadel off here. So you can play with people's, when their awareness, when they think they're safe and they're actually not. And not to knock the Genon at all, because he does an amazing job this game in dealing with me. So like, I don't know if I complimented him or not, but he does like a really phenomenal job. Like he plays it super well. And then we're just trying to kill this stupid submarine. You know, I thought we got this salvo off in time before he could go deep enough, but it doesn't get the kill. And so I get another heal off. This is the unique upgrade Petropavlovsk, so we're only going to get 3 heals. We do have Kuznetsov, so we get another heal, quote unquote. But the Shimakaze hasn't been doing a very good job. You know, we have a 12-kilometer radar, and he decides to smoke up and sit in front of us. He's not being very smart. He's not being very aware. And then rather than turning out and running up the 2 line, he turns in towards us, which is definitely a pain. You know, at the same time, CV's coming back to drop us again. Genon's shooting us over the island. We have a submarine out in front of us was at one point looked like he was coming at us. We got to deal with the 3 Torporaks on Shimakaze. So this is a really overwhelming situation in terms of awareness, because I needed to go forward to bait the Shimakaze torpedoes. I couldn't just sit still and freeze and then him actually accurately land his torps off on me, which means it pushes me out further where Genon is going to keep shooting me. So sometimes when you work on your awareness, it's pros and cons. Like sometimes you're not going to get a scot-free situation in terms of a decision that you end up making. But I'd rather deal with Genon pelting me as I keep the torpedoes from Genon from hitting me, because I'm keeping the island between him and I. I'd rather be shot by Genon than eat Shimakaze torpedoes, right? And I'm trying to reverse further back because the island on my right is higher, and I can possibly neglect me from taking more fire from the Genon. But I had to reverse, and as I'm reversing still, then we get to see the submarine's torpedoes, and we use the damage control party to get rid of the ping at the right moment so we can accelerate forward and that the submarine torpedoes won't refocus on us. And then we have to push out. So I used the Hydro, of course, before we pushed out. That's the benefit of sitting there utilizing the island. When you're in the type of situation that we're in this game, the CV, a Malta again, is just focusing us. Like, there's no way the Malta is going to allow me to sit in Alpha, in cap, if you will. Now, granted, if I would have remained in the cap a little bit longer, you can say, well, you have another cruiser, you have another battleship to provide your AA, but it's like, really, it's a Malta. Like, Malta's always going to get a strike off unless he's just absolutely stupid and flies right into an entire flat cloud. So there's nothing really gained by us passively sitting there and just continue to get farmed. So but it was a decision. We could have stayed there, but I chose not to. I probably would have stayed there if we had another heal ready to go. So maybe you're not a unique upgrade Petro and you have a 4th heal. Let's hang back with the team and try to get the heal off with the team together. But I decide maybe the aggression will pay off, which it has so far. We just picked up Confederate. We spotted a CV. And I'm being aware here in terms of how player mentality works that if I shoot the Malta and pull and make Genon feel comfortable, he might end up showing me more side and I can get a Citadel. Maybe I can finish him off because ultimately dealing with him is a pain because he's playing it really well. He's angling really well. So that's why I said, like, this Genon player, like, he played really, really good. And I'm not wanting to switch to high explosive, but I'm kind of getting frustrated because I want to, if he turns a little much, I want to be able to utilize armor piercing. And I just go ahead and blow a radar there at the end just to see if it catches anything for my team before I die, like if the destroyer is running down into Bravo, as an example. So those are 2 examples where you have CVs in the game, and it's a lot of focus on you. Cerberus is kind of the opposite. It's a cruiser in which it's rather passive. That Wargaming decided to introduce a cruiser into the game that can effectively, I think, was it over 2 minutes? You can sit in your crawling smoke screen and just farm, right? So Petro isn't this, in one example with Petro, it's this cruiser it's tanky, it's out there. I think we had over 3 million or plus potential damage in that last clip. It's all these things, and you normally you're focusing on trying to go for caps, and that you have, we did 25k salvo to Broadside Conqueror, right? But Cerberus is this opposite direction where it's much more of, it's a cruiser where you can play more passively. It's a farming cruiser. So you're not putting yourself at risk as much when you're in something like Cerberus, or maybe you're in something like an Azuma, because you don't really push necessarily Azuma. Like Azuma is a kiting ship. Venezia tends to be a kiting ship. Some of the German cruisers can do the kiting role. The Saint Louis, the Henri cruisers, right? They can do the kiting role. So it's a little bit more passive. But I think Cerberus is probably, perhaps this is just my opinion, it's probably amongst one of the most passive tier 10 cruisers in the game now because of just effectively having a heal. So what does that mean then when we're talking about awareness? Where it means, when I'm using the term passive for like Cerberus, it becomes where you don't have to have such a high face mental capacity to be constantly aware of what's happening. It's always good, of course, to be reading the minimap, being aware that, hey, I just did a double fire on the Vyazma. He disposed DCP. It's a cruiser DCP. I can switch back to Vyazma. Let's see if I can get some permafires on him, right? And then go from there. So really, it's just focusing on overtaxing people's damage control parties, the repair parties. You get 12 2 and 3 millimeter guns. You have this longer reload time. But you're not a cruiser. that doesn't really push. I mean, yes, you have a hydro. Yes, you have submarine surveillance. You have a repair party. You utilize your crawling smokescreen, but the armor scheme is really terrible. I mean, it's not, of course, terrible as something like Neptune, Minotaur, and that, but you're really vulnerable in Cerberus. So when you don't have your smoke, you really do have to be mindful if there are ships, battleships, cruisers who decide to focus you, because it is easy to get death struck in Cerberus. You have an above water citadel. So, you know, we don't want to just, when we're trying to be aware, you know, I think there's a DD, there was a DD on C. We don't want to necessarily always just be sitting still. The cruiser life tends to be you're always utilizing your propulsion and going forward and reverse. In this game, even though we're down 2 destroyers, like we have pretty good map control right now, and having both Bravo and Charlie cap for the time being. The DD to step back onto C. So there's nothing that's really pressuring us to make big plays right now. The game is still young, if you will. But we decided to focus Iowa, see if we can get the fire set on him, get his DCP overblown. You know, part of it is, you know, if he ends up burning through a lot of his heals and DCPs, it'll be easy for a team to focus him later. And there I got shot, you know, over, 20 kilometers away by another enemy battleship. So that's a good example where being aware is important. You know, and as soon as I end up getting spotted mostly here, you look at the mini-map, right? Where's my team? Oh, we got a battleship up on the 10 line, but not a clear line of sight by everybody there. And then we've got 2 other ships back behind the islands. So then when I'm aware, I'm like, oh, I should have realized that I'm going to be a bit more focused in that moment. Because even actually, if you look down at A, you see there's 2, I think it's 2, maybe there's 3 ships sitting up behind the island. So it kind of makes sense that that battleship actually took a pot shot at us to over 20 kilometers away, as odd as it was. And I wasn't expecting it at all. So that was a very bad misplay by me. What tends to hurt most players in the game when we talk about awareness, whether you're in a battleship, cruiser, or destroyer, it is the focus of the problem of tunnel visioning. I mean, I could say the same about submarines, or especially aircraft carriers. Like, it blows my mind how I see often so many CV players in the game who just don't pay attention to the minimap at all. They're up on a flank, that flank's collapsed, and then all of a sudden they start spamming in chat that they request support as 5 ships are bearing down on him from 10 kilometers away, and he hasn't been reading the mini-map at all, like not reading the rune, right? And you have all this time in between your strikes, and yet still there are CV players who just lack complete awareness at all because they're just super tunnel vision. So the same, to a certain extent, can apply for destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. And if you tend to tunnel vision a lot, which I tunnel vision when I'm in the heat of a moment, when there's a lot going on. Maybe I'm trying to avoid a Satsuma salvo. I get caught off guard as a Bourgogne, and Bourgogne claps me in my radar Minotaur because I didn't realize that the Bourgogne, who had been spotted by our CV, was wrapping around B towards our spawn, right? In the heat of the moment of playing a radar Minotaur, which requires a lot of awareness as a whole to play well. And it's a very punishing experience if you tunnel vision too much, especially in like light cruisers, right? So light cruiser life tends to evolve more around utilizing smoke screens. You know, the heavier cruisers that don't have really good armor, like Azuma, which I think Azuma was probably better several years ago, but now Azuma is just absolute pain, in my opinion, to play. It's because of how the game has evolved, and we get more and more battleships with overmatch. And that's the big thing that sucks for cruisers these days, is because of how much overmatch there is. I think Wargaming had kind of said back in the day that they would never introduce a main battery caliber over 460 millimeters, like you had on Yamato and Musashi. But we know how it goes with Wargaming and them trying to quote-unquote keep a word. It's impossible. So then we got even larger caliber with, like, was it 483s and 510s in the game. So the cruiser life is punishing, nonetheless, to say the least, but it can also be the most rewarding. I've always said with cruisers, a cruiser, if you're able to keep a majority of your hit points, like let's say at least over half, by the last half of a battle, then you tend to exert a lot of influence in how the game goes, but doesn't neglect that. You need to continue in your awareness, right? So what makes cruisers even more damaging, more violent, more of a threat as the game goes on, is that it tends to be that there are less enemy ships on the board, right? So at this point, even though we're already 10 minutes, almost 10 minutes into the game now, there's 4 ships are dead. One's a battleship, one's a cruiser, 2 are destroyers. Well, I don't have a radar, right, on Cerberus, so the chances of being spotted by a destroyer and me not being able to spot back has greatly diminished, right? So then there's more chances for me to control my concealment and not get spotted in a way I'm like, wait, where is this destroyer at? Where is this submarine at? Or there's less battleships on the board, so there's less overmatch possibilities. So like here, I have to keep looking over towards the Colombo. I'm working the situation right now where I'm able to keep the island between me and the Bismarck, but as the Colombo kind of circles back, he's going to spot us. And then Bismarck's going to take a pot shot, so I can't necessarily just turn directly nose in to Bismarck, because then I'm going to have to deal with maybe eating a full salvo from, I hope it is a Colombo and I'm not saying it wrong, eating a whole salvo from him, and like his sap will absolutely wreck me. He can easily, oh, it's a Sicilia, excuse me. So he has sap secondaries by high explosive, and armor piercing instead of sap, like that's one of the trade-offs, but just sap secondaries on Sicilia. So that's the other thing, as I talked about earlier, like what type of ships are in the game, right? So for most cruisers, sap is absolutely the worst to deal with because it will overmatch your armor very easily regardless of your angle. So it's not great, right? So that really requires you to be aware of what ships are positioned on what flanks, especially when you get into ships that have a higher main caliber gun. I think if I remember right, we just shot at a Satsuma or Yamato or something like that. So you can easily Citadels, right through the deck. There's still a Napoli back and behind us that Doom's pushed out from being behind the island. Like he just had to make the play, so just they prevent him from continuing to just sit there. And being aware that I'm not being focused by anything else right now, so you don't really have to smoke up. I'm utilizing the island to block potential salvos from Alpha Cap towards me. There's still that Iowa at play. The Bismarck's dead. There's still the other battleship behind us. So if the other battleship ends up spawning behind us, then I know, hey, I'll go ahead and use my smoke screen. I'm gonna go dark. In this instance, I'm like, okay, it's either a submarine or a destroyer spotting me. And I decide, let's just go ahead and smoke up. Let's play it safe for now. I don't want Sicilia to just run around the corner and just absolutely smash me from behind. And we get to utilize an island because we know there's a DD still at play. So we baited the DD's torpedoes out, and we're just going to reverse back and on the island. Now here's interesting because I get spotted. So it tells me that he's within my smoke fire penalty range. Or it's the Sicilia behind me. Because he's decided to kind of traverse the gap. And we do get chunked pretty hard, right? So then it's like, oh, not only that to be aware of what's happening, but, is there a ship within your smoke fire penalty range? Because you can't just always think, I'm smoked up, I'm safe. No, it might not be the case. So then Sicilia pulls out, an Uno reverse card that, hey, I'm a battleship also with the smoke screen. So even if you won't spot me, if I spot you first because you shoot first if I approach you within your smoke fire penalty range. So it's kind of all these factors that you have to be mindful of. Now we're just trying to play the island, if you will, because we don't know where the other destroyer is. We don't know where the submarine is, this, that, and the other. So I think I've said most of what I wanted to say as a whole when it comes to having awareness. I still want to do some videos. I have a battleship one still to do on awareness. But I'm probably going to do an actual live commentary. It'll be sort of like a battle thought process, but it'll talk about constantly reading the mini-map. there's a huge difference in playing the game if you constantly are referencing the minimap. I tend to get in most troubling situations when I'm not paying attention to the minimap. Like I've gone too long, and that's hints like I missed the Bourgogne who ran through Bravo. That was spotted by our CV because I'm being too sweaty trying to hunt DDs and dodge a Satsuma salvo coming in at me, right? So we'll probably still do we'll do a mini map sequence as well, because that kind of extends beyond more. It connects with awareness, but it's a little bit more intensive than just having the normal awareness. Because maybe some of you are like, "Wow, Flimsy, I can't believe you can take such maybe a small topic and just keep expanding and building it out." Because it's hard to. I can't tell you everything I'm thinking always in the midst of the live commentary, right? Because it's like I might be thinking through 5 or 6 things at the same moment, but I can only say one of those 5 or 6 things, so on and so forth. So that's going to be the video for today. So next one up will be a battleship awareness video, probably next week. I'm just going to guess at this point in time. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.